Hello, my name is Moral Saurus. Welcome to Moral Saurus Presents. My guest today here is Professor Jesse Graham. He's a management professor at the University of Utah. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks. It's weird and terrifying to be here.
Yes, it is. Um, well, Jesse, you're an expert on moral psychology and, in particular, on this idea of moral pluralism. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, moral pluralism is just the idea that there are multiple moral values that humans have, and some of these differ across cultures, across individuals, and they can come into conflict, both between cultures, between people, and even within people. And part of the idea is that these are irreducible values, so you can't just reduce them all down to a single good versus bad. There are sort of different kinds of moral concerns people have.
Can you give me an example or two of some moral values that humans have that maybe dinosaurs may or may not have?
Sure. One example of a moral values that can come into conflict might be we all value fairness. We all value, to some extent, loyalty, and a lot of times those can come into conflict. So, say that something wrong is happening in your group. Do you blow the whistle? Should you sort of rat out your team, your in group, and to create more fairness. So that's one value conflict. Another one that I think is interesting is sort of care or compassion, wanting to be nice to people, not hurt their feelings, and honesty. A lot of times those come into conflict. So if somebody got a terrible haircut, should you tell them that or not? Or should you spare their feelings?
Usually I would just eat them.
Oh, that would be one way to resolve the value conflict, because then their haircut doesn't really matter much anymore.
That's right. Um, so you've written a lot about these different moral values in terms of something called moral foundations theory. Would you be willing to explain what that is a little bit?
Sure, that's it's a pluralist theory where we're trying to explain why people morally care about the things they morally care about. We think that there's a first draft of the moral mind, so we do think there's a kind of evolutionary basis to a lot of our moral concerns. But we're not born with particular moral opinions. I think there are sort of foundations that cultures build on to build systems of value. And so we've looked at things like valuing care, being concerned about harm, valuing fairness, equality, proportionality against things like cheating or just unfairness. There's also sort of group level concerns like loyalty, being concerned about somebody betraying their own group. There's also concerns about showing respect for authority and traditions, seeing signs of disrespect as a moral problem. And then there's concerns of spiritual and physical purity. And so a lot of people take very morally seriously the idea that we should maintain a kind of purity of body and soul.
Interesting. Now, when humans talk about morality, they usually talk about it in terms of doing what's right and what's wrong. Um, but could you talk about, can morality ever be a bad thing?
Yes, definitely. I think morality can often be a bad thing. In fact, I'm here at the Summer Institute for Moral Psychology at Cornell. I think the job of this institute should be to stop morality in its tracks and to eradicate all signs of morality. I think, like other aspects of human nature, I think there are a lot of negative consequences associated with our moral nature. So we all like to think that our moral convictions, our moral opinions are good and an important positive part of who we are. But I think there's actually a lot of negative consequences that can come out of our moral convictions. So, for instance, a suicide bomber terrorist is not amoral. They have very strong moral convictions that they think they're doing the right thing by blowing themselves and others up. That would be a kind of extreme example, I guess.
Are there any examples of when morality is good? Is it always bad?
It's not always bad. I guess we shouldn't completely eradicate it from the world. It can be good too.
So my main moral foundation is hunger. So I typically, when I think of morality, I think in terms of should I eat it or not?
I see.
And so one of the nice things about my viewpoint is that I rarely experience any kind of moral conflicts.
I guess you wouldn't if you're always eating things. Do you ever feel bad about eating things?
Well, sometimes I get a bit of indigestion, but otherwise, no, I don't feel bad about eating people.
What if the people you eat don't want to be eaten?
Uh, that really doesn't bother me.
Okay. In my case, I actually put out a personal ad recently asking for people or dinosaurs to eat me. So I'm fully consenting, but I would imagine there's a lot of people that really don't like being eaten.
Yeah, most of my guests on the show have seemed a bit upset at the end of the episode.
And you don't feel guilty or bad about that?
No, not really. I mean, I'm a dinosaur. I've got to eat. And having traveled so many years in the future, I'm really only able to eat humans.
Well, Moral Source, here's an idea. Hear me out. I think that bit of indigestion that you get sometimes after eating people, I think that might be your conscience. I think that might be a little pang of guilt. That I think deep down you do feel bad about eating people, and you shouldn't always eat them.
Interesting. Um, I hadn't really thought of it that way. I usually thought of it as, just a pain in the stomach, but hadn't thought about that. Is that what a conscience feels like?
Yes, it feels exactly like indigestion.
Exactly like indigestion. Huh. Does it feel at all like hunger pangs? Like my stomach is too empty?
Hunger pangs are the feeling of being a good dinosaur who doesn't eat people.
Wait a minute. Are you just trying to trick me?
Like I said, I'm very excited about being eaten. I'm just worried about the people that aren't so excited about being eaten.
Okay, good. Well, thanks very much, Jesse, for being on the show, and thanks for being my most willing guest to for this part of the show. Uh, thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh my God, this hurts so much more.